Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Retake League of Legends Edition, brought to you by EGF Media. My name is Jared Warnke, and joining me tonight are Christian Saxby Gillespie, Kalis, Zen, Amujastegi, and Brendan Simon Volibear Jacobs. How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Doing pretty good.
Pretty good. So let's get into the news first. And the biggest story of this week is that Fnatic have dropped their support Noxiac and have picked up LCS rookie Klybike. Now, from what I've read, he is pretty much new. He's played on like a couple of smaller tournament teams, but this is going to be his first time on the big stage. And Reckless has actually kind of supported him a little bit, saying that like he'll be pretty good. And in other news, Immortals, still undefeated, Giants still haven't picked up a win. We'll get into that later. But first, let's get into the LCS breakdown. So we saw some great matches this week. So we'll go to our guests to give us their top picks from the week, from NA and Europe. So Christian, we will start in NA.
I was a big fan of the NRG versus TIP game. Really exciting, 34 kills. Just tons of kills, heavy aggression. Look at these teams that we have. We have Impact, GBM, Alltech, all really aggressive, and then TIP with Fang and Mash and Pyrian, all really aggressive. I was a huge fan of GBM completely dominating the entire game. He went 9-3-5 on the Blanc, and he basically single-handedly won the game at a Baron fight where he deleted Pyrian's Lissandra. And then that gave them the Baron, and then the win less than a minute later.
Alright, Kalis?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Christian. That game was pretty good to watch. For a second there, I thought Team Impulse would win, but couldn't do it. But the favorite games I like to watch are both the Immortals games, because it's always fun to watch them dominate. Haven't lost a game yet, and that's always good thing, because Wild Turtle is my favorite ADC.
Alright, bring it on in, Brendan.
Alright, my game of the week for NA was C9 versus NRG. This was the opportunity, because of the way the brackets ended off playing out. There is now a 4-way tie for second place, and if NRG would have beaten Cloud9, they would have catapulted themselves into a solo second place. But as they lost to it, now Cloud9 is tied for second place with Energy, CLG, and TSM. And Cloud9 has already beaten CLG and Energy, and they only lost to TSM, so it's a really interesting second place.
Yeah, we'll have to see as they get into the second half of the LCS, which starts this upcoming week, how they're going to be adapting and playing everybody that second time. So now let's go to EU. Christian, what do you got for me?
I have the Fnatic versus Rocket game. That was quite the interesting game. For the first half hour, it was just Airwax goes bot, Reckless dies. It happened like 4 or 5 times in laning phase. Then Rocket screwed up by not shutting down Reckless's farm. They just let him keep farming. By endgame, he had 500 CS, and he did 60,000 damage to champs. He completely dominated. He was frontlining, because that's what you do when you have a Janna Lulu and you're a long-range ADC like Caitlyn. You need to, shut Reckless down. So Rocket started great, and then they just faltered completely.
One of my favorite moments from that game was when Rocket were trying to go into the base of Fnatic, but Reckless just set up that wall of traps. And it was just like, the second anybody stepped on one, half their health got chunked out because he would just keep hitting headshots one after the other.
Yeah.
Alright, Kalis, what's your pick from EU?
Well, I've kind of skimmed out on a lot of the EU LCS games, but I'm gonna go with Unicorns of Love versus Vitality. And since I haven't watched any of them, but I know Unicorns of Love is doing pretty good, so what's wrong with going with a good team? And Vitality was looking pretty strong, so I hope that was a good game to watch, because I personally didn't watch any of the EU LCS games.
Yeah, we had a really good matchup in the bottom lane between Steelback and Hjarnan, who were at the top of the table last year. Steelback obviously being on Fnatic in the spring split, Hjarnan playing for H2K, and them playing very well with their supports. And Brandon, what was your pick for EU?
Mine was actually the first game of the whole week, which was Elements versus Vitality, and it's because the pick of Lucian, not as an AD carry, not even as a mid laner, but as a top laner, and he went off. Cabochard did an amazing job, 5-1 in a game that had 8 on one side, 1 on the other. He was their only death, but he really destroyed a game playing top lane. It was quite a show.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those niche picks that you really don't get to see too often in the LCS. That and Cabo ended up soloing.
Yeah, he was the
Steve
first.
twice.
He had the first kill on Steve after the first tower, and it was really, really one-sided.
All right, now let's get into the teams of the week. For North America, Immortals are currently sitting at 8-0, still undefeated, and as Brendan said earlier, CLG, NRG, TSM, and Cloud9 are sitting at second, 3 games behind at 5-3. And for Europe, Gamers2 and H2K are tied at 7-1, Unicorns are right behind them at 6-2. So, Christian, who is your favorite team from the week?
Obviously, in North America, I've got to go with Immortals. Everyone said, against CLG and the really hot Team Liquid, they might lose this week, and they went 2-0 in pretty convincing wins. From Europe, I was surprised that Unicorns of Love with Rudy just played really well. Rudy showing no, nerves at all. He was not afraid to make aggressive plays. He was not afraid to counter jungle. He was a dominating force, very reminiscent of how Diamond has been playing with UOL.
Yeah, it's a shame that Diamond Prox is having all the visa issues, like a bunch of other European players, like Ryu. Freeze had a little bit. Froggen still is having issues.
Yeah.
So we will have to see in the upcoming weeks if a lot of these teams can get their power players back. Rudy did obviously play well, but I think that Diamond Prox was definitely one of the driving forces of the Unicorns. Kalis?
And I gotta agree with Christian again, with Immortals, always winning. But I was, when people were saying that they could have lost to CLG or Team Liquid for the upcoming games they had, it didn't make sense to me because it didn't look like they were gonna lose. Because yeah, Team Liquid had some convincing wins, but maybe they weren't on that high of tier teams. Did they win against Energy? Were they that team that beat them?
Yes.
Yeah. So they did beat Energy, but Immortals beat Energy too. And I don't know who beat them better, but I'm gonna go with Immortals. Probably did. And again, I skimped out on EU LCS teams, so don't have much for them. But
All right, Brandon,
Unicorns
who are
of
your
Love.
picks?
Immortals, clearly they're undefeated. There's the second place thing is not even a game under, it's several games under, so Immortals are clearly at the top. They've beaten everybody. And from the EU, I like G2 over H2K because G2's only loss is to H2K, and I would like to see them when they rematch them. In my opinion, I think they're going to tie that split, so they'll take the next win. But H2K already lost to Fnatic, so I think that's a huge thing. It's not even the team they're sharing the first place with, so they have to be able to beat all the lesser teams, and if they can't do that, they're not going to be able to take the first spot.
See, I'm actually going to pick Cloud9 as my team of the week because they ended up going 2-0. Sneaky didn't die at all this past weekend, which I think has been very impressive for a team that has been struggling with High jumping around from mid laner, and then he jumped over to jungler, and then he jumped over to support. The current Cloud9 lineup has shown a lot of flexibility and strength in how they've been playing, and they could possibly, if they keep running this, have a pretty good shot at taking maybe top 3, top 4. And now let's take a look at the bottom teams. In North America, Renegades and Echo Fox are tied at 1-7, and then right above them are Dignitas and Team Impulse sitting at 3-5. Whereas in Europe, Giants still haven't picked up a win at 0-8. Rockhat, 1 game ahead of them at 1-7, and Splice barely ahead of them at 2-6. So, who were your big disappointments from this past week, Christian?
Obviously, Renegades from NA, another 0-2 week. did not look good. Hakuho, is it pronounced? The Romilia, her
Yeah, I do
her
believe it's Hakuo.
replacement. Hakuo, yeah, he didn't look so hot, you know. I can't blame him entirely. Renegades is a very bottom tier team, as we've seen. Poor Freeze, you know, he's trying his hardest to carry. He played really well on that Draven, I'll give him that. But Renegades is just bad. And then Giants, I don't have much to say. They're just not a good team by any means. I expect them to get relegated very easily.
Hopefully Giants can possibly pick up a win this week. I think they're playing both Rocket and Splice, so it'll be interesting to see if Pepe, who was Pepinero, who was one of the best EU mid laners, not even that long ago, last summer. We saw a lot of his big plays, and he just hasn't really been able to perform. Alright, Kalis, who are your bad teams from last week?
Well, I gotta go with Echo Fox, man. I just feel bad for them, and I think they could have won a lot of their games, maybe if they played better, but it's not going too well for them with all that and all the players.
Yeah, the visa issues obviously with Froggen. Golden Glue hasn't really been able to measure up to Froggen. Golden Glue is actually a seasoned LCS player. He was on Dignitas, I think. He played a bit on Coast when they were relegated. He's been around. He just hasn't really been able to bring up his skill level at all. And
Yeah.
Brendan, what's your bottom team from this week?
I'd also have to agree. Unfortunately, Renegades, them losing Romilia is, in my opinion, a huge blow to the team. I'm actually a fan of them, and I've been rooting for them every single week. It's kind of upsetting to see them perform so poorly. I think they have it in them, the skill to be a good team in the next few seasons, but like again, they were a challenger team. They don't have much experience. RF Legendary, it's his first split. Yes, they have Crumbs and Alex each coming back from different teams, but like you have to start facing the best to actually get better. And now I will bring up the fact that I think G2 is also a first year team, and they're doing so well on the other side, but it's each team reacts differently, and you never know if you're going to be good or bad, and it takes a little bit to get in there. And then on the EU side, Giants, they're just they don't have a win, so a lot of troubles in their team.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about a lot of these challenger teams that come into the LCS is that most of them are hit or miss. LMQ, they came in and they just ended up dominating. They ended up taking third for the LCS Summer Split, getting that trip to Worlds. And then they rebranded as TIP, and they've been doing mixed since. But you brought up Gamers too, so I would like to talk about that a little bit. So we actually see a lot of success from Gamers too, where they have the LCS veteran Kikis, who used to be the jungler for Unicorns. He's now in the top lane. Do you think that change was good for the team? Brendan?
I mean, I haven't seen that much of G2. I again have also focused more in the NA, but it looks like they're just doing really well. I don't actually have that much ready for them.
All right, so let's move on. So we have another round of games this week. So who is your team to watch? Christian?
For North America, I think Team Liquid and Cloud9 can both finish top 3, top 4. Honestly, they've both really stepped up the past few weeks, especially C9 with High. Team Liquid and Cloud9 actually play each other this weekend. I'll get to that later though, so I'll keep that brief for now. And over in Europe, I want to see Fnatic with Klybike. According to Reddit, a few people that personally know him over in Europe, they've said he's got natural leadership and shot calling abilities. So we'll see if he could bring that out his first week.
Maybe he could bring out what Yellow Star left.
Exactly.
All right, Kalis, who's your team in the hunt?
I think Team Impulse and Liquid can pull out some pretty nice games, maybe. You'll never know, but they seem like they could do it. They seem like a team that could give us a good to watch game that'll just pull you right in.
Yeah, I think that Dardoch and Lorlo synergy has definitely shocked a lot of North American teams because
Yeah.
they're the Bash Brothers. They've been playing so well together. And Brendan, who was your team in the hunt?
My teams for NA is Cloud9. I'm really interested in seeing if or when Bonnie will actually step up, or if he doesn't, and will it work? Or is Cloud9 really High's team? On the other side, on EU, I think Team Vitality, I'm really impressed with their pick. And I'm looking over the names. There's a lot of people on this that are just names that you would associate with really good players. So I want to see if they can improve from their 4th place spot to actually get up into the top 2 or 3. So.
All right. So we had a lot of we had a lot of great fantasy players and a lot of bad fantasy players. So let's talk about it a little bit. The high scorer actually this week was TSM's 80 carry Doublelift with just over 64 points in his 2 games. And the biggest underperformer was Giant support Godfred with 2.26 points. Basically, that's 2 to what? The 6th power more points Doublelift had? Who surprised you guys? Christian?
Rudy absolutely killed it this week. I was, all about Selfie last week. He racked up 45 points in his first week with H2K, and now Rudy this week, out of nowhere, the guy pulls 40 plus points. People, everyone said he had to fill the shoes of Diamond, who's been carrying unicorns, and this guy absolutely stepped up. And then, of course, Immortals players are all really high scoring, especially Wild Turtle. So if you have him, pick him up, plain and simple, but he's most likely off the table.
Alright, Kalis?
I think Doublelift could be a good guy to play if he keeps performing really well, but if you don't have him, go with Wild Turtle, and if you don't have them, then I don't know what to tell you. Could be screwed. Go with Sneaky and all that.
Brendan?
I mean, I'm not participating in fantasy, but from the stats that I can see, Wild Turtle's clearly the best option you have out there. Generally, as far as other players go, from what I've seen, really any of the 80 carries.
Alright, so who should people play this week on their team, Christian?
Obviously Immortals, that goes without saying, but for, more surprising picks, Team Liquid has been racking up a ton of points the past few weeks on their winning streak. Phoenix, Piglet, Dardoch, even Matt and Lorlo have been racking up, 30, 40-point weeks. They play an aggressive early style, which nets them a lot of kills, which means a lot of points. And they also have a moderately easy week. They're against C9, that'll be a tough game, but then they most likely have a free win against Renegades, quite frankly. I hate to put it bluntly, but let's call it what it is.
Yeah. Alright, Kalis?
I can't be a judge for who you should play on fantasy because I didn't do fantasy this split, but always some Immortals guys, put him on your team.
Alright,
Trade
Brendan?
for him, do whatever you can.
I was gonna say Seraph because I have been looking at his stats. He has a lot of kills, but I don't think he's actually gonna be performing this week. So I don't know, Sneaky, if you have a chance.
Yeah. Seraph is back on the roster for TDK in the Challenger Series now.
Oh, I thought you were about to say TIP. I'm like, wait, he's back?
No. He went back down to the Challenger Series. Maybe we'll see TDK next split, and maybe you can pick him up then. So, now that we're done with fantasy, let's get into some of the predictions for next week. So, what matches should we be watching, and what matches are you really excited for, Christian?
As I mentioned earlier, Cloud9 versus Team Liquid, that's going to be an awesome game. They're both looking to separate themselves from the mid and lower packs. Team Liquid will be 5-4, or I think they're playing Sunday, so Team Liquid can net their 5th or 6th win. Cloud9 can net their 6th or 7th win, which would be, they are playing Saturday. Anyway, that's going to be an awesome game. Over in EU, H2K versus G2, the battle for first place. I'm all aboard the G2 hype train. I think that's going to be an exciting match.
Yeah, especially if Ryu isn't back yet. They're still starting Selfie. That Perks versus Selfie matchup, I think it's going to go heavily into Perks' favor, especially if he gets his Corki. Alright, Kalis, what games are you looking at this week?
Both the Immortals games and definitely both of the TSM games, because fan of both.
All right, Brandon. What
I'm
games
gonna have
you?
to go with. I'm gonna have to go with Cloud9 versus Immortals. Cloud9 is currently 4-0 on Sunday, so their streak is gonna end, or they're gonna end Immortals' 8-0 streak. I personally think Immortals are gonna win, but I'll be rooting for Cloud9. And also the battle for first place in EU. Can't get
All
much
right.
more exciting than that.
All right, as always, matches start for EU Thursday and Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, and the NA matches start Saturday, Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that will do it for tonight. I'd like to thank Christian, Kalis, and Brendan for joining me. And if you ended up liking the show, be sure to follow us on Twitch, find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Those links are in the description down below. And from all of us here at EGF, thank you all for watching. You can join us next Monday at 9:30. We will be back here for another retake League of Legends edition. And I'm Jared Warnke, and I hope you guys have a very nice evening.
Thank you for having us.